Thanks, Yolo. I'd rather wish perhaps you hadn't mentioned the last one because I don't want any technical accounting questions. Having in the last week done 2 CIPFA local authority accounting conferences on what we've decided for the code for 16-17. So if any of you are interested, catch me over the coffee and please don't ask questions for this section of the presentation. So here we are after lunch, the graveyard slot, and you're all feeling nice and warm in the room and full. So we'll try and keep it as interesting as possible. We are living in a world of new technology. Every day new technology is launched and data is everywhere. And we've seen it in terms of the advent of social media, things like Twitter, Facebook, but also mobile devices and the ability of the cloud to enable us to store huge amounts of data. We are truly living in a digital world. So, over the last few years, we've seen new startup companies really disrupt some traditional businesses. We've seen Twitter and Facebook form, but we've seen companies like Spotify, Uber, Airbnb really disrupt traditional industry. And these companies have entered the stage in a very confident and bold fashion, dancing the salsa, while large organisations, perhaps like public sector organisations, stand like elephants on the sidelines. And a challenge for you as professionals in the public sector is, can you teach an elephant to dance salsa? So what are the key factors around digital innovation? And I'm sorry about all this noise on the sound. So there's 4 key elements that have happened. Social media, and I'm sure all of your organisations and many of you are on social media and often use that as a way of communicating outwards to your consumers, your service users. But actually, social media of the future will be about collaborating and co-producing with your service users in terms of the future communications profile. I attended the Cardiff Business Club on Monday night where Lord Hall from the BBC was talking about what they're doing around two-way collaboration and co-production with audiences. So I don't know, those of you that live in Wales and watch the weather forecast with Derek, you can now become one of Derek's watchers and tweet back to him the actual weather conditions that you're seeing in your environment. Should we all watch him for a bit? But smart devices, we're all sitting in the room with our smart technology and our smartphones, and again that's been a major impact in terms of the mobility of use and access to internet. But then when we do our usual global chief executive survey, actually the most pressing points in terms of strategic priorities for chief executives in the globe at the moment is around the data analytics, data and digital, and also cyber security as well. And they are the 2 most strategically important themes that come through in our chief executive surveys. By 2017, as consumers, service users, but also as employees, we will actually be a different shape of generation. By 2017, a new breed of customer will dominate, called the digital natives, those that have only ever been used to using digital technology in their working lives. So this will affect you in terms of your provision to service users, and it will also affect you in terms of your employees' expectations and how you will attract and retain the best employees. And actually, for those of you that are a bit reluctant to engage in the digital agenda, these digital natives are the ones that are experts in it. So actually, again, in some of our survey work that we've done, 30% of people now stay connected at all times for the use of their mobile technologies. So actually, when you look at that, and 59% of people say that they control some aspects of their living through mobile technology, maybe in terms of the boilers at their homes and controlling the temperature at their houses. So actually, these people of the future, our future workforce and our future service users, will be people who have expectations on us as service organisations in how we deliver our services to them. And if you don't believe me, I thought I'd share with you some research that we've been doing as to the size of what we call the connected market. And by 2020, we predict that the global connected living market will be worth $1 trillion. Now, the UK share of that could be something like $2 billion. So actually, in terms of the investment that the private sector are making in technology to help us as organisations deliver services is immense. And some of the figures around here on the slide, so you're not going to be able to see them much in the back. The top left there is the entertainment and media industry, 135 billion predicted market by 2020. So you might be sitting there thinking, well, I work for a public sector organisation, what's this got to do with me? And I'm going to pick out some of the bigger numbers on here that relate to the public sector. And just to pick out a couple of them on the slide before I talk about them in more detail, bottom right there, the 446 million, that represents education opportunities in terms of the global market for connected living and connected working. So let's think about some of the public sector areas in a bit more detail. So in terms of my transport and the interconnectivity of transport, I mean, it's a pretty traditional thing that we think about now in terms of technology, paperless sort of ticket machines and the way that you are provided with information on bus stops that tell you digitally when to expect the next piece of transport. But actually there's still more to be done in terms of the interconnected transport network. So maybe by the time we finally get a South East Wales metro project, will it even need drivers in those trains? Will we have high-speed broadband internet access as we actually sit on those trains and those vehicles to get to and from our employment? How will those transport providers work with other aspects in terms of employers, in terms of demand for transport and the speed in which that will both operate and be available to their users? So in terms of integrated transport and in terms of transport around cities, particularly big market. My education connected, like I said earlier on, in total terms a market of some £446 billion, but in terms of just education and learning, that in itself is estimated to be over £345 billion by 2019. And actually you see this, so there's some survey work that we've done that according to our Connected Living survey, 21% of Londoners are already using some form of structured, massively available online open courses for them to actually educate themselves. And I've put some other sort of stats around up here. So there's some education technical company, Coursera, offering massive open line courses now, and they have over 22 million students. So the availability and accessibility of education online is absolutely huge. And that stat there, that in 2012, 200 people signed up to a Stanford class on artificial intelligence on campus. By the time the course was launched and had began, 160,000 had signed up to that course online. So the massive ability to reach mass audiences in the education sector using online technology. And the bottom one there, Moodle, an open source online learning platform, and I know that some of the councils use this, has over more than 67 million users in 229 countries. So a massive opportunity to reach an enormous audience in terms of education provision. And it does really make the sort of traditional models of education delivered only at institutions over a specific period of time looks increasingly out of step with a world that is demanding lifelong literature. And actually in terms of demographics as well, the ageing population will have more demand if we're expecting to work longer and an older age, then actually how do we make ourselves more skilled up for the future? And again, in our chief executive survey, 58% of chief executives have skills and the ability to access skills as one of their key worries. And how does connected living and connected education offer businesses an opportunity to work with education providers to make online learning available to all? Moving on then to my healthcare, the way we look at our healthcare is changing rapidly. Until very recently, looking after our health was more or less to preserve a sort of traditional professional provider to the patient type of relationship. The doctor was king and we just went with everything they said. But actually many technology businesses are developing and launching health-related products. I don't know if anyone in the room has one of the wristbands on that collects data on their health every day, but today wearable monitors and apps can track much more than just general fitness and activity. They can constantly monitor and record a whole range of health indicators. And again, according to our Connected Living survey, 26% of 18 to 34-year-olds wear such technology and monitor their own health through that technology. And so that enables them to be more vocal and demanding about their expectations of healthcare professionals, and actually that gives them more control and more information and more data to challenge healthcare for professionals on the way in which that services should be provided to them. So just imagine a situation, just take two diseases to think about here, but diabetes, there's already the technology available for those that suffer from diabetes to record their glucose levels and send that off using their mobile phone devices straight through to their healthcare provider. And actually what that can do is eliminate the amount of times they need to go and see a healthcare professional, but instead exchange data with their healthcare professionals around how they should be treating their condition. Take another example, take cancer care. Imagine if all you had to do when suffering from cancer was take a pinprick of your finger, get a blood sample out of that, and then using a mobile device, send that off to your professional, who could then, by the time you've got to the hospital, have already concocted the chemotherapy that you may need, and actually making your visit to the hospital shorter, and actually enabling the hospital to see far more any patients on a much more effective level. And just to remind you of that clip in the beginning video here, imagine a world where the pregnant lady can do her own scan at home, send the details of that off to the doctor, who by text could respond to her, having reviewed the scan. And actually, isn't that a better world for that, better patient experience for that individual to live in terms of that interaction with her doctor and her healthcare provider? And healthcare, the health sector, a massive market, private sector investing extremely heavily in this area in order for the technology to be available for the future. So what then about local government? Bit difficult to see from the back, but again, in terms of our surveys that we do of local government chief executive, the first question we ask was, my council is confidently embracing the opportunities new technologies offer for better local public services. 60% of chief executives we surveyed agreed with that. 70% of leaders agreed with that, but only 28% of service users actually agreed with that statement. So that says a lot in terms of the expectation gap of service users compared to the provision of councils. And again, the next one down, 38% agreed with the statement that they are satisfied with the digital access that they have to their council services. So if you're sitting there as a council thinking you've invested millions in your online service provision and your website, actually what this is showing to you is that your users expect more of you in terms of their place. And actually, we often hear technology and we think about the young, and I'm just a bit worried about the sound on this next video, so I'm about to play you a new video about how we can actually use technology in service delivery right across the population. This video is actually about making technology available to future and elderly population as well. PwC in Wales were really proud last week to be one of the sponsors of the Business in the Community Wales Action Week on helping the ageing population. And these photographs up here are actually some of our staff, and there's a couple in the room or out at the stand there that are featuring on these photographs, actually helping the aged population. We had an afternoon high tea with IT, we called it, and we actually got these elderly people to road test some new products that we've been working on in conjunction with Google around making technology accessible both to the user, but equally actually helping it in terms of service provision to those people as well. And so it looks like, if we can get the sound working, I can show you that. But actually, it's great to see. So we held this afternoon, last Friday afternoon, up in Caerphilly, in the Ridgeway Golf Club in Caerphilly, with some tenants and residents from RCT Homes, where I happen to sit on the board. They had a great afternoon, and the feedback that I had from some of the PwC people that were there was actually, if they had had a stash of iPads there available to sell, they would have sold them all. There was that much engagement in the room, and that we'd really missed a business opportunity in terms of selling them to those elderly people. So it's often easy to think about technology and think it's just about young people, but actually the engagement we're seeing around the ageing population as well is quite phenomenal in this area. So it's not just about having the data available to you, it's about using that data, providing insight and working effectively as a workforce to make product and service improvement. And some of the stats around some of the work we've been doing in this area in terms of it was mentioned on the slide, again, in terms of length of stay improvements and reduction in bed occupancy over a 12-week period. These are the sorts of results that we get by using data for more effective insight and working as a workforce, actually getting together and communicating much more effectively on how to make changes. So in this world of data and data analytics and the digital age, what is the role of the finance professional? It could be really easy to get sidelined by actually all of this stuff. But actually, we are analytical people. We love the numbers, and we are more than able to provide insight to our organisations. So what do we think finance professionals should be doing? We should be really taking the grip on this agenda. Get yourselves engaged in terms of this. Understand the possibilities that are out there and unlock the data potentials and data possibilities within your organisations. Use some of those digital natives who are really enthused by this to think about a world in the future and how data and technology and data analytics can play a part in improving service performance in your organisation. Now, we've seen a lot about data and the use of digital in this presentation, how the young and the old can both be enthused by it. But equally, when I look back at those statistics on education and lifelong learning, actually, when you look around Cardiff at the moment in terms of some of the investment, and at Swansea, it was mentioned earlier on in terms of the Swansea Bay campus, actually it's education institutions that are still building new buildings to house people. And actually, whether or not you engage with digital and whether or not you engage with data is very much a personal choice, and you do need to keep a balance in an organisation. So if I haven't convinced you to get engaged in the debate, perhaps the final video might just do that. So it won't be for everyone, and you'll be relieved to know that those of you who are not digital natives, paper does have a great future too. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. There's plenty of more material that we've put up here, and on your tables we've just left some cards with just some web links if you're interested in finding out more on this. But actually, as finance professionals, don't be left behind in the debate. Start leading it from the front and think about how digital and data can improve your organisation's performance. Thank you.